Hi, this is 100 and 100, where we review 100 VR games in 100 days. Today we're looking at Fruit Ninja VR. Fruit Ninja VR is a game that's adapted from the mobile game that you must have played on an iPad or an iPhone long ago when it first debuted. The name of the game is slicing fruit with your sword and not hitting the bombs. In our VRGear game reviews, we like to cover as many aspects of the game as possible so you can make an informed decision before you try or buy a VR title. Fruit Ninja VR is a fun game to play, but there are some caveats and we want to walk you through them as to what this game is all about. First, let's talk about getting up and running in Fruit Ninja VR. This game can be found on any of the VR platform stores. It's on the Viveport Infinity subscription, the Steam store, and it's on PSVR and the Oculus store. The game costs $14.99 on any of the VR stores, and it's part of the Viveport Infinity subscription, so you won't be paying extra for this one. The download file is 1 gigabyte in size, and once the download completes, you should be able to install and start the game up pretty automatically right through the game library in the different platform stores. Once the game loads up, you're presented with a menu that gives you 4 different options of gameplay. There's arcade mode, classic mode, zen mode, and a new survival mode that is definitely something that is difficult to survive if you aren't prepared and if you aren't familiar with controls. But this game is really easy to jump into. It's a bite-sized, casual type game, and it is a great one for people who are new to VR to experience if they're trying to avoid motion sickness and play around with the different VR physics. You'll play this game from the first-person perspective, and all you'll see of yourself are ninja leather-wrapped hands and your samurai swords. Otherwise, you won't see your body or anything else about yourself in the game. But you will be playing this from a first-person perspective while holding 2 samurai swords, standing on a platform as fruit either launches up from the ground in front of you or is shot at you by floating robots of sorts. For theme and story, I really have no idea what the background story is for Fruit Ninja. It is a casual game, and maybe it doesn't need a story. But the theme of this game is slicing fruit, and that's a very fun theme if you've got sharp samurai swords that you don't know what to do with. And in this case, that's exactly what you're set up with. Samurai swords and a platform and flying fruit. All you can really do is slice it. So, in Fruit Ninja, the theme here is cut the fruit. The story, there is no story. Just don't die, don't hit the bombs, and hit the fruit that's being shot at you. Controls in this game are very simple, and the only things that you'll be doing is swinging swords, including in the menu. There is no trigger pulling or button pressing. The way that you interact with the game in all scenes is through swinging your sword. If you want to pick a game mode, you slice the fruit that is in the floating circle around that game mode name, and then you're in the game mode. Once you're in the game mode, you slice a fruit that is coming at you or shooting up from the ground. If you want to fail a level, you slice the grenades that are being shot into the air. Then the level's over. The only controller input for this entire game is swinging your samurai sword and being a fruit ninja. For music and sound, this game has a very familiar background track that is just like the mobile version of Fruit Ninja, and it was likely just ported over into VR. The fruit slicing sounds were also likely ported from the mobile version of the game. There are some unique sounds to the fruit as you're slicing them. For example, when you slice an apple, it sounds like you're biting into it. When you slice a coconut, it sounds like you're hitting a hard, hollow object, just like a coconut is. And all of the other fruit that are softer, they sound the same when you slice those. There's not a lot of variety there, and the sounds of slicing aren't necessarily additive, but you can notice that they're different when you slice some of the different fruits. The other sounds you'll hear in the game are the launching of the fruit from different angles, and the spatial audio is done very well here, so you can hear which direction the sound is coming from. Overall, the same soundtrack is playing in the background for all the game modes, and the same sound effects are heard every time you hit the fruit, and the same sound effects are heard every time you fail the level. As far as music and sound goes, it's somewhat repetitive as you progress through the level, and that's to be expected for a casual game like this. For player movement, this game was sort of different than your normal standing VR in front of you, no movement scenario. You do stand in place or sit in place, and you can play from a standing or sitting position. Part of the reason that you would want to reposition this is because you can't see the entire playing field without moving your head from side to side. This might have been part of the game developer's intention, but it didn't turn out very well in gameplay because the chutes go beyond your field of view. Looking from side to side to see just a little bit more information became very irritating, and in the real world you would have just taken a step backwards so that you could see more in front of you. But doing this results in your swords not being able to reach the fruit to slice them, and so player movement was limited. You can't move closer or further away, and your swinging of the arms relative to the distance became a little bit unpredictable, and as a result the gameplay suffered. Overall, player movement is limited to rotating from left to right, looking up and down. Your player doesn't move through the VR world, and your real world self doesn't really move much either, besides turning from right to left. As far as motion sickness goes, you're not going to get motion sick in this game. It's a low-key casual game. There's not a lot of player movement. There's only rotation from left to right. The one thing that might become disorienting is when you're trying to find fruit that isn't in your field of view, just right outside of it, and you're having to turn your head a lot to pick those up in your field of view so that you can slice them. But again, this is a very low-key game. That player movement isn't going to cause motion sickness at all for the majority of people. And so this could qualify as a great beginner's game for people who are new to VR or who don't really want to go in and play a first-person shooter or fly through the air skydiving. Fruit Ninja is a great, no motion sickness type game that new players will really enjoy. For environment and immersion, this game is very much lacking some key ingredients that would make people want to stay in it for long periods of time. The gameplay is interactive, and you do feel some satisfaction in slicing the fruit. However, there were some issues with the length of the swords, there were some issues with the tips of the swords, hitting things they shouldn't hit, and it made it difficult to master the controls. And control mastery is essential for immersion, and it's essential for prolonged gameplay. And because these frustrations persisted, the game was very easy to jump out of and kind of put out of mind. There's also lacking story, and the theme here is kind of a silly theme, and it's not a very powerful theme, and as a result, the environment was not a compelling environment to remain in. So immersion and environment suffered a great deal because a lot of the other aspects of a great game were lacking as well. All right, let's look at the scorecard for Fruit Ninja VR, starting with story and theme. This game does not have a story, and the theme is kind of a weak theme. We're giving this game a 3 out of 10 for story and theme. Controls in this game are really simple, and there aren't really any controls. You're just swinging your hands as they're holding swords, slicing fruit. So we're giving this game a 7 out of 10 for controls. A pretty good score for a game to get 7 out of 10. For music and sound, we're giving this game a slightly above average 6 out of 10. The game developers did map the sound of slicing fruit and the sounds of different fruit being sliced pretty well. And the soundtrack is good, but it becomes repetitive after a while. So this game has good music and sound, but it's not great. And so we're giving this a 6 out of 10 for music and sound. For player movement, we're giving this game a 6 out of 10. You're playing from a stationary position, but there are some issues with where you're placed on the playing field and how much you need to be rotating to interact with the game. There seems to be a missing element in the player movement and the player positioning in the game that really could use some improvement. So a 6 out of 10 for player movement. For motion sickness, we're giving this game a high score of an 8 out of 10. There are some things that the game can do and should do to improve, and that is specifically around the player movement and your ability to rotate left and right or move forward and back in this Fruit Ninja arena as you're battling off the robots shooting fruits at you, or trying to get a better perspective on the fruit being launched from the floor. There's a very low likelihood of motion sickness, but there are some improvements that the game should make to get that score a little higher. So an 8 out of 10 for motion sickness. For environment and immersion, we're giving this game a middle of the road 5 out of 10. The playing arena does not change over time. The music and sound is repetitive over time, and your desire to come back and play this game again and again, it's just not there. And so the environment is not as compelling as it could be. You don't feel as immersed as you would hope to be, and so we're giving a 5 out of 10 for environment and immersion. Now for the overall score for Fruit Ninja VR, we're giving it a 5.8 out of 10. That's a little bit better than average, but there's still a lot of room for improvement, and there's some missing elements that we've discussed that we really hope the game developers add to the game to make this a great title. This has been 100 in 100, where we are reviewing 100 VR games in 100 days. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell so you can be notified tomorrow when we release another VR game review. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.